The message came the night before the funeral. Short, cold, final. Do not come tomorrow. No explanation, no greeting, no hesitation. I read it once, then again, letting the words settle into something real. Not surprising, but still final in a way that couldn't be ignored. I didn't reply. There wasn't anything to say that would change what had already been decided. Instead, I set my phone down and sat there for a moment, letting the silence fill the room. Tomorrow was supposed to be about her. Not them, not me, her. And yet somehow, it had already turned into something else. I stood up slowly, walking toward the window. The street outside was quiet, the kind of stillness that feels heavier when something important is about to happen. Or not happen, because according to them, I wasn't part of it anymore. The next morning, I still got ready. Not out of defiance, not to prove anything, just because I needed to. Because no message could erase what she meant to me. I arrived early, before most people. The place was calm, almost silent except for the quiet movement of staff preparing everything. Flowers arranged carefully, chairs lined up in perfect rows. Everything said exactly the way it should be. Respectful, orderly, complete. I stood at a distance for a moment, taking it in. Because this was real, not the message, not their decision. This. I took a step forward. And that's when I saw them. Near the entrance, waiting, not welcoming, blocking. You shouldn't be here, one of them said immediately. No greeting, no softness, just enforcement. I stopped, not surprised, just confirming what I already knew. I'm here for her, I said. That's not your decision anymore, they replied. That line stayed, because it said everything, not about the funeral, about control. We made it clear, another added. You're not part of this. Not part of this. Like something could be removed that easily. Like connection worked that way. I looked at them for a moment. Not reacting, not pushing back, just seeing. Move, I said quietly. Not aggressive, not emotional, just direct. They didn't. Of course they didn't. Because in their minds, they were right. You've done enough, one of them said. Just leave. Done enough. That almost made me pause. Not because it hurt, because it revealed something. They thought this was about presence. About being seen. They had no idea. This isn't about you, another added. Don't make it harder than it already is. Harder. I nodded once. Slowly. Because moments like this don't need reaction. They need clarity. And I had it. I'm not here for you, I said. That didn't change anything. Because they weren't listening. They were enforcing. You're not coming in, they repeated. Final. Certain. Confident. I looked past them briefly. Inside. At the room. At the place where everything had been arranged. Where everything had been prepared. Where everything had been made possible. And I understood something clearly. They believed they had control over this moment. Over who belonged. Over who didn't. They were wrong. But not in a way that needed to be argued. Not yet. All right, I said. That response caught them off guard. Because they expected resistance. Emotion. Something they could respond to. I didn't give them that. Instead, I stepped back. Calm. Steady. Certain. You're just leaving? Someone asked. I looked at them briefly. Yes. Another pause. Because now, they didn't understand. They had prepared for conflict. Not acceptance. You should have stayed away in the first place, one of them muttered. I didn't respond. Because it didn't matter. None of it did. Not in the way they thought. I turned and walked away. Not rushed. Not dramatic. Just finished. Because the moment they thought they controlled was never fully theirs. I reached the end of the walkway before stopping. Not because I needed to. Because I chose to. I pulled out my phone, glancing at the screen. Everything was already in motion. Exactly as it had been. Unaffected. Because what had just happened wasn't part of the plan. It was just the moment that revealed it. I typed a short message. Simple. Direct. I'm not attending. The reply came almost instantly. Understood. We'll proceed. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and looked back one last time. At the entrance. At the people who thought they had protected something. Who thought they had made a decision. Who thought they had control. And I understood something simple. They didn't just keep me out. They kept out the one truth that made everything inside possible. And by the time they realized it, it wouldn't be a conversation anymore. It would be a realization. One they couldn't avoid. They didn't realize anything at first. That's how moments like this always begin. The ceremony continued exactly as planned. Guests arrived. Voices stayed low. Everything moved with the same quiet respect that funerals carry. From the outside, nothing was wrong. But underneath that, something was already missing. They just hadn't felt it yet. The first sign came before the service even began. A quiet conversation near the front. Not loud, not dramatic, just uncertain. "There's an issue," someone said. "What kind of issue?" another asked. "A payment confirmation," the voice replied. "It hasn't cleared." That shouldn't have mattered, not in a moment like this. But it did, because things like this don't go unnoticed. "It must be a delay," someone else added quickly. Of course they would say that. Because delays are temporary. They don't require explanation. But this wasn't a delay. And within minutes, more questions followed. "The service provider is asking for verification." That doesn't make sense. Everything was already arranged. The confidence began to crack. Not loudly, just enough. Because now, they weren't completely sure. One of them stepped aside, pulling out a phone. Making calls. Trying to confirm something that should have already been certain. "It says the payment was never completed," they said. That changed everything. Not the ceremony. The understanding. "That's not possible," another replied. "It has to be," they said. "They're asking for authorization." Silence. Small. Tight. Because now, the situation was shifting. "This needs to be fixed," someone said quickly. "Yes," another agreed. "We can't delay this." They started moving faster now. Making calls. Checking details. Trying to solve something they didn't understand. Because the assumption had always been simple. That everything was taken care of. That everything was handled. That everything was theirs. And now, that assumption was gone. The phone rang. Again. And this time, they called me. I looked at the screen for a second before answering. "What's going on?" they asked immediately. No greeting. No control. Just urgency. "What do you mean?" I replied. "The burial arrangements," they said. "There's a problem. They're saying the payment." "I know," I said. Silence. Then, "How do you know?" they asked. Because that was the part they didn't understand. "Not yet. Because I arranged it," I said. That stopped everything. Completely. "You, what?" they said. I didn't rush. Didn't explain more than necessary. Because the truth doesn't need complexity. "The $50,000 burial you're trying to proceed with," I continued calmly, "was set up through me." Another silence. Heavier this time. "That's not possible," they said. "It already happened," I replied. Another pause. Longer. More real. "You're saying you paid for it?" they asked. Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. Just fact. Nothing came back immediately. Because now, everything made sense. The arrangements. The level of detail. The cost. The structure. None of it had come from them. Not really. "Why would you do that?" they asked. That question stayed. Not because it was difficult. Because it showed exactly what they didn't understand. "It wasn't about you," I said. No response. Because now, they were listening. "It was about her," I continued. "Making sure everything was done properly." Another pause. "And now?" they asked. There it was. The shift. From control to dependence. I looked ahead, the quiet street still unchanged. "Now the process requires confirmation," I said. "What does that mean?" they pressed. "It means," I replied, "the arrangements don't move forward without authorization." Silence. Deep. Real. Because now, they understood. Not everything, but enough. "You're doing this because of what we said?" they asked. That question almost made me pause. Not because it was wrong. Because it was small. "No," I said. "What you said just made it clear." Another silence. "We didn't know," they said quietly. And for the first time, it sounded real. "I know," I replied. Because that was always the point. They didn't know. They didn't ask. They didn't question, they decided. And now, they understood the cost of that. What do we do? They asked. That question again. Different situation. Same meaning. I didn't rush to answer. Because this wasn't about giving instructions. It was about clarity. You proceed, I said. How? They asked. With permission, I replied. That landed. Not harsh. Not aggressive. Just true. Another pause. Then, can you authorize it? They asked. There it was. Everything they had pushed away. Now standing in front of them. I let the moment sit. Not out of hesitation. Out of understanding. Because this wasn't about control. It was about respect. I already did, I said. Silence. Confusion. Then, what? They asked. The arrangements were completed, I continued. Everything is in place. Another pause. Then why? They started. Because you assumed, I said. That ended it. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just completely. They had assumed everything was theirs. Assumed everything was handled. Assumed they understood the situation. They didn't. And now, they did. I ended the call. No final words. No need. Because the situation itself was the answer. I stood there for a moment, letting everything settle. Not victory. Not revenge. Just balance. They called me a disgrace. Kept me out. Tried to remove me from the moment. But the truth was already part of it. And always had been.